So we all know those formats where they're really good and interesting formats, but after a few months they get stale. In fact, we're sort of experiencing one right now, and I think I found the solution. In my ideal world, each year contains one big shift in the format, where there are multiple new decks that go in and out of the format, and each year there are multiple mini formats that can be just a few card changes and maybe a new deck or two. This helps to keep the game fresh and players engaged. Big changes would include new sets, starter decks, or planetary collections, and smaller changes would be creator card contests, ban lists, and this new idea I'm about to share with you. For new sets to be effective at being a big change, Zach just needs to keep doing what he's doing, because all 5 sets have resulted in big meta changes, with new decks being introduced and old decks moving out of the meta. For new starter decks and planetary collections to be effective, they would ideally add a new deck based around whatever archetype they come with. On top of this, they should also have 1 or 2 generic planet support cards to buff a pre-existing deck the planet has. For creator card contests to be effective, ideally one winner is a card that can be a focal point to a deck. This ideally pushes a new deck to be competitive, like what Xemius has done. It was one card that built on pre-existing support to become its own deck. For ban lists to be effective, they just need to hit the right cards. Whether this is 1 card or 10 cards, they just need to make the format more skillful and diverse. Ideally, they come out every 6 months, even if it's just for one change. I think it's good for the community to always know there will be a ban list every 6 months, since there will always be something to limit, ban, or unban. At numerous points across the year, there are holidays that are celebrated worldwide. Christmas, Easter, Halloween, New Year's, and Valentine's Day, just to name a few. And there are even some Chaos Galaxy holidays, such as its initial release or Zach's birthday. And it's on these days where I think there's a real opportunity for new Chaos Galaxy cards to be released. And now we'll get into my new idea. Basically, I want something called seasonal cards. They're a handful of cards that are released for a few months around a holiday, and their designs should be based around these holidays too. And I know Zach isn't in it for the money, but it would be a cool thing to chase in sets and add further incentive to buying cards in real life. I think people would be very hyped for these cards, and they would benefit the community in various ways. This could be implemented in a few ways. The first way is they're released like limited edition cards, through reprint sets. The second way, and my preferred way, is that they would be released in each main set as an additional rarity. As for the design of these cards, there's a million ways you could do this, but the key is that unlike regular sets, all these seasonal cards should be competitively viable, or else it defeats the purpose of being used to freshen up a format. You could design them as an archetype that function together. However, to do this, there would likely need to be a minimum of 5 cards. You could also design them as better options to filler cards that are just used to reach 34 cards. For example, in Gaia's midrange, cards like Gargantros and Vokopekimak aren't great on their own, but are played due to temple traps, so maybe cards with similar stats and a small effect could be released. And this isn't to invalidate old cards, it's just to give the deck cards that they want to play. The last way to design them would be the missing piece to a puzzle. If a deck is missing 1 or 2 cards of being competitively viable, this is a good opportunity to push it to the next step. For example, Burrobugs are 1 or 2 cards off being competitive, and the same can be said about Roka midrange. This also allows Zach to sort of fix mistakes or oversights, which I believe is one of the main benefits of this idea. For example, he never intended for Pelisium to be tier 0 in that format, so maybe he would have been able to step in with the release of a few seasonal cards to help nerf Pelisium and buff other strategies. Or maybe he wants to make a push for a planet to be viable in set 6, but he falls a bit short and they need one more thing to make them competitive, so he releases the final piece of the puzzle. I think now would be a perfect time for a seasonal card release. I mean, set 5 was released nearly a year ago, and the only meta change we've gotten is Xemius. With ban lists at 6-month intervals and seasonal releases once a year, we could have easily had 2 or more mini formats. Seasonal cards would also allow for people to have chase cards when buying IRL, and would help expand content opportunities for myself, Mishmallow, Fish and Snoopers, as well as help freshen up the format without giving it a massive overhaul, which I think is the main appeal of this. Now, sometimes throughout vids, I sort of just chuck up random custom cards, and that's sort of just my way of sharing cool card ideas. It's just something I like doing, and they sort of relate to the content I'm talking about, so you're just gonna have to deal with that. Now, I'm not here to tell Zach what to do with his game. Obviously, if he implements this, it costs him more time, which he may not have. You should view this more of a dream or fun idea that I thought I'd share with you guys, and that I would love to see become a reality.